Hey everyone, this is Kevin Townsend. First time doing a Microsoft Teams live event, so if things go wrong, that's why. But if you've noticed, you probably got chat, so you can communicate with us through the tool. I'm hoping you all can hear me, so if you see my mouth moving but can't hear me, could you chat us up? Let me know that. I want to make sure I'm coming through here. Curious if anyone could go ahead and send us a Q&A or something like that, just to let us know everyone's in. Looks like we got a good attendance here, so we'll get started. Just give me a couple minutes and we'll kick this thing off. Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate that. Yeah, I gotta figure out how to hide the Mac bar across the top. I can see that's coming through. Sweet, everyone's hearing me loud and clear. Love it. I can see your question. Thank you. Teams webinars are recorded, yeah, and it's available to all the attendees afterwards. So I usually will download these anyways, regardless of the platform we deliver it on, and put it on YouTube. So I can definitely follow up and send that link out afterwards. No camera sharing, huh? Let me see. Turn camera off. Yeah, I really hope that you guys could see my camera as well. That's a bummer. Okay.
Do we need to share?
Say what?
Do we need to share so they can see our faces?
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking to figure that out. Round two, maybe next Thursday, we'll get the cameras finally going. But thanks for jumping on. I think we should probably just kick this thing off. I appreciate you all and your patience here. Again, my name's Kevin Townsend. I'm a managing consultant here at Bamboo Solutions. I've got on the call with me today, Ellie Petrova, business development manager here at the company. And I've also got Nicholas Ferrandeo on the call, who's also a consultant here at Bamboo. So as we go through the discussion today, please feel free to inject any questions you have into the Q&A tool, and we'll have Ellie and Nick help you guys out as much as possible. And then I'll definitely approach some of those questions verbally here as we go as well. So moving off of the GoToWebinar platform and into the Teams live events, because I really wanted this to be more interactive so that you could communicate with us and then get immediate responses. And so it would just feel a little bit more like we were having a conversation as opposed to me just kind of preaching some text to you or flipping through some slides, right? So thanks again, everyone, for jumping on. Let's go ahead and get started. So today's discussion is around the migration pitfalls and the tips and the benefits for migrating to SharePoint Online specifically, right? So I'm kind of assuming the audience here, and unfortunately I don't think we have any polling tools here in the Teams live event, but I'm assuming the audience here today is coming from an on-prem experience and are interested in more information about moving over to SharePoint Online or migrating over, right? So if that's not the case, then hopefully this is beneficial for you. And if you're already on SharePoint Online, hopefully this is beneficial for you. But this is primarily targeted to that audience. So as I go through the content, it may bring some ideas up of things that you're currently thinking about or strategizing for. And please do feel free to ask those questions. All right. So Bamboo Solutions, right? We're a global leading provider of applications and consulting services for extending SharePoint and Office 365 native capabilities. That's who we are, right? Let me get the slide going here. So we know, right, that migrations are stressful, They're time consuming. It's one of the largest, I guess, more complicated things that we can do in the SharePoint space specifically, right? Now, I know we're talking about SharePoint Online today, and the migration path for on-prem to on-prem is a little different, right, than what we're going to experience as we move into online. And so, the coordination of all of this effort, we hope to highlight some of that and try to get you on your way to being more successful during your migration process, right? So we've done lots of migrations at Bamboo Solutions. We've, if you don't know who we are as a company, we're, again, that global leading provider of that software extensions for SharePoint, as well as consulting services to help you implement, adopt, and configure and customize, right? That's who we are. We've been doing it for quite a while. We've got over 8,000 customers served worldwide. We're a Microsoft Gold partner. We've supported some really large companies as well as some really small companies. And we've seen pretty much every use case of SharePoint implementation that you can probably imagine. So we bring that power and that experience to 15 years of really trying to help people move into or off of or whatever, right? SharePoint, some sort of an environment. And so we've got 50 plus products that we've developed over 15 plus years. We've of course, love our customers as much as they love us. And we continue to sort of bring this experience to light so that we can share our experiences and our knowledge with the pretty much everyone that's in our space, right? So that we can all sort of have this strong community feel. A lot of things, I guess, something that a lot of people don't know about Bamboo Solutions is that we are products and services, and we do span across pretty much the full suite of solutions, apps, etc., right? Environments that Microsoft provides. And that's just kind of the world we live in now, right? We could be a SharePoint specific shop, and we could focus on just solutions, support, and things like that around SharePoint and only SharePoint. Well, that's not the case anymore in SharePoint Online and Microsoft 365 and the Azure pieces that can also integrate into this full ecosystem, right? So, putting it out there that, all of this is tied together, and so our expertise has obviously had to shift to be not only experts of SharePoint, but of Planner and Teams and Dynamics and Power Apps and Power BI, right? So we're definitely there in the space. And Ellie and Nick, just want to make sure you guys are able to see chat and questions and everything, just so we can watch that as we go. Is that working for you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get started then. So moving to SharePoint Online, right? Let's talk about the features first, the reasons you might move to SharePoint Online, and make sure that we understand the benefits that we're getting out of this complex and stressful experience, right? So I assume you probably know what that is, and it could be, maybe it's organizationally driven, maybe it's politically driven. For whatever reason, though, we should at least be aware of some of the things that SharePoint Online is going to give us over being in an on-premises environment. So I just want to highlight those real quick. We're only talking about 6-7 slides of benefits here, but hopefully they're things that you've either thought about or bring up, for conversation in your organization, so that you guys can take this back and sort of have that round table and talk about some of the things that maybe you didn't consider before, right? So the modernization and the integration experience that you're going to get in SharePoint Online versus SharePoint On-Prem, it's like no other, right? There just is no comparison to, first of all, as you've probably seen, the amount of apps that come in a SharePoint Online environment, an Office 365 or Microsoft 365 environment. It's unbelievable. I was just looking at the webpage earlier today. It shows all of the apps included, and I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say it's like 30 something apps, right? And they all integrated into the SharePoint user, right? The identity, the experience, and then you have Power Automate to kind of glue it all together. Just to say that it's completely integrated, right, as an ecosystem, and it's definitely worth taking advantage of. It's stuff that's hard to do, right, in an on-prem environment like that. Secondly, right, security. Security is insane around the Microsoft space, right? You can't compete. Your organization, yes, you might be in an organization that's federally funded or is a government place or takes it very seriously, but I guarantee you're not spending $1 billion on security every year, right? If you are, wow. So Microsoft does, right? And they take this seriously. Obviously, they want to become the world's global computing platform, right? And in order to do so, they have to ensure and instill some level of credibility and integrity to the data storage mechanisms that they handle, right? So anyway, security is a big deal. Physical security, unmatched, I would say. Like the amount of biometrics and physical security features for their facilities. And in fact, I was just reading about this. I didn't know this, but their data centers are not even disclosed. Their locations are not disclosed. And yeah, you might know John down the street who lives next door to a data center, and we think it's a Microsoft one, but for the most part, no one knows where they are, right? So that's one thing, right? And then the encryption of data, that we live in that world. We've been living in that world for quite some time. So meeting those standards there, probably exceeding them. The identity protection that's involved, right? We're getting that MFA, that multi-factor authentication, so that, maybe it's a BYOD situation where you're using an app on your phone to get your two-factor code to type in when you're authenticating users, or whatever the solution is, right? We're getting that MFA automatically built in if we enable it, right? We've got data protection agreements in place with Microsoft when we purchase into this ecosystem, if you will, right? So that we can feel assured that our data is safe and there's an agreement that can be met or inquired upon, right? We've got backups, so how much money have we spent in on-prem environments over the years buying and supporting those backup systems, right? And going through the struggles of just keeping that stuff on top, keeping people on top of that process, right? It's a lot. And then last but not least, just want to highlight there's no data mining at Microsoft. So that's a concern, right? And a lot of companies, I won't say their name, but they start with a G, right? And I'm not opposed to the G brand, but there is word that data mining occurs on those platforms. And I don't know if it's true or not, but we can be assured here, Microsoft says there is no data mining occurring in the 365 platform, which is important, right? So the compliance manager, compliance being a major selling point of Office 365. We want to make sure that when we move our stuff over there, we're still able to meet the same requirements, regulations, assessments, and audit requirements that we have in an on-prem world, right? So, for instance, the pre-built assessments for common industry standards and regs, right? So things like, I think it's ISO and HIPAA and those are just a couple that I've been working with lately, but there's an entire website dedicated to demonstrate the compliance regulations and standards that the platform meets. I think it's called the Microsoft Trust Center. So if you just do a quick search for that, you can identify which products in the Microsoft platform, whether it's Azure-based or Microsoft 365-based, you can quickly identify whether or not that service meets the requirements or the standards or regulations that you're, having to meet in your organization. So the workflow capabilities to help your org complete risk assessments, right? So this compliance center provides all of this right into it. It's got AI and ML that's driving an experience that gives you, risk-based compliance scores to let you know how you're faring, according to the standards that they set. How do you fare against those checklist items? Have you done this thing, right? And the system says, no, you have not enabled this service, and you probably should. So it's probably going to give you a lower score, right? So all of this automatic stuff. And in fact, when you first sign up, the workflow that I'm talking about here will actually step you through the guidance on suggesting improvements to those actions that you need to take to help your org comply with regulations or standards, et cetera. So super useful tool, very powerful, and bringing us in line with standards and regs, without having to be truly an expert at it, right? To some extent. I'm sure that some organizations out there have many more that have to be met, but the basics can be covered and they're actually offered to you in a very intuitive way. Scalability of SharePoint solutions, or SharePoint itself, right? And sort of hosting and providing an infrastructure like SharePoint requires. Moving to SharePoint Online, the scalability of that, look at those numbers down below, if you will. Total storage per organization, 1 terabyte plus 10 gigs per license purchased. All right. And it's by column there, right? And so most organizations, I would say, probably live in that middle column, 365 E3 licenses or E5s, something like that, right? And so that's usually the information we're looking at, unless you're, got some frontline workers out there on the F1, F3, Office 365, F3, et cetera. But you just look at those numbers, right? 2 million sites. What kind of infrastructure would you have to stand up in your on-prem environment to support that kind of scale? You know, I don't know. I haven't ever actually tried that. But it would be insane, right? And it would be costly and it would be time consuming. There'd be a lot of planning and strategizing and architecting, and there'd be a lot of money spent on new hardware to support it or upgraded storage, etc. Right? So this to say the scalability in SharePoint Online is a huge boon, right, for businesses moving over to the cloud. Constant feature updates. How many times have we spent on on-prem environments on the weekend running feature updates to our SharePoint farms, right? Oh, we got to schedule the outage this weekend. We got to run the CU, or we got to run that security vulnerability patch, or the you name it, right? Right? So the service packs around. Oh god, here we go, right? So no longer, right? These constant feature updates are just rolled out to your tenant in SharePoint Online. There's no more maintenance weekend going on. And I'm sure your admins would just jump for joy about that, right? Just given to you, just rolled out, just brings you up to speed with what the latest is. And so last Thursday, two Thursdays ago maybe, I did a webinar on the Microsoft 365 roadmap, really just talking about what, in that webinar, what to expect in 2021 in the SharePoint space, right? What are we looking at this year in the SharePoint space? And I talk a little bit about how they're changing the on-prem licensing model now. It's actually moving in the SharePoint 2021 version to a subscription-based model of licensing, which probably going to be a little bit unreachable for some organizations, right? Now we'll talk about licensing more in a little bit, but the goal with the 2021 version of SharePoint for on-premises is to get you ready for cloud migration. It's supposed to be the intermediate step to getting your org upstairs into the cloud, right? So anyways, all that to say, this 365 roadmap, these features that are highlighted on there, you can go there, check on SharePoint, and you can see everything that's in development for SharePoint. You can see everything that's in development, about to roll out or rolling out, and then you can also see the stuff that's just been launched. So that is yeah.
We do have a comment in the comment section.
Okay, yeah.
Saying that, well, first that they hear you, but they can't see you, but everything has to be evaluated by their FIPA and proven to not pass data through the US. That is the comment.
All right, okay, let me read that real quick, sir. Everything has to be evaluated by our FIPA and proven to not pass data through the US. So it can't come into the US, you're saying, and that is absolutely attainable. So they do have the ability now for your tenants to be structured, geographically separated, and protected to only ever let your data reside in the geography that you specify. So that is definitely an opportunity for you to use that feature. Hopefully that answers your question. So let's move on. Office included. So we got to get through these because we still got to talk about the gotchas and the experiences we've had, right? And things to be aware of as you go through your migration, but really driving home these benefits so that you can take this information back. And there's, you know, this stuff is pulled off the web. So you can find this yourself. This is just me kind of compiling all the experiences and the benefits that we see being most interesting to organizations and sort of helping drive those experiences, those discussions, those collaborations internally to make the decision to move to the cloud, right? All right, so Office included. We, in SharePoint on-premises, in previous versions, we were installing Office Web App Server. We were trying to get, you know, Office in the web in our on-premises environment so that we could quickly open up documents, browse them, preview them, maybe even work in them in the browser, right? The experience that you're going to get in SharePoint Online, it's what you'd expect in the modern era of real-time collaboration, right? So, you know, you may be a Google Docs user, maybe you've been working in Dropbox, or maybe even Office 365 or OneDrive Online, stuff like that, right? That experience is kind of what we expect today. We expect to be able to click a link, view a document in its native format, work in it in the browser even, and that's there in SharePoint Online without the need to configure, install anything, right? And in fact, the new features that just came out to Office, you know, the Office web apps that we use in SharePoint Online, the comment system is incredible inside of that now. So now that real-time collaboration that we've been doing in documents, now has an entire chat feature around it, right? So used to, we'd work in a doc and we'd insert comments and we would reply to those comments inside of the document itself. But with Teams and all of the other things that wrap into this overall solution, now we're working in documents, working in them in real time, seeing a whole chat conversation occur, off to the side there as we're in it, right? So it's just more real time, more seamless integration, and just a simpler experience overall, right? So super key there that's kind of baked in, if you will. External user access is another really big selling point, and it's one of the most commonly asked things in some of our pre-sales and consulting engagements right now. So what everyone wants to do is they want to work in a document, which we'll talk about OneDrive in just a moment. OneDrive is kind of that place where users can draft up their documents. And like I'll tell you in a minute, it's kind of like the new My Documents folder. And so in that location, we start up a doc. We start typing our initial notes and our rough draft, and we get going. And then eventually, we want to work with someone on that rough draft or that template or whatever it is we just created. Now, a lot of the times, that's actually an external user that we want to work with. Maybe it's a customer, maybe it's a vendor, maybe it's a partner. Whatever it is, there's this need now to bring people in to where I'm working and have them be able to work with me. And that's completely doable now, and resides by some of the strongest security you're going to find on the web anywhere in the world, right? This Microsoft hosted platform. And we talked about at the beginning, $1 billion, right? That's a bunch of money spent on the security around this. So rest assured, right, the experience you'll have now trying to communicate with external users through the tooling included in SharePoint Online or Office 365 apps, it's going to be extremely intuitive. So a few thumbnails here on the screen just to kind of highlight. There are 3 primary options for working with external users in SharePoint Online. Now, the left side, anyone links, you can pretty much create a link that says anyone can see this if they have this link, and you can set it to expire at a certain time, certain date. But what that means, though, and you can restrict this as an organization, it's not necessarily completely open or completely off, right? You can actually configure this thing appropriately, let's just say. So this isn't just a hard pass that either everyone has access or not, right? So then you can also specify people in your organization links, and that just means people in my org are the only ones who should ever be able to access this document, and you can actually specify specific people. And then, yeah, like I said, the last box there, specific people links, that just means I want John to see this, and here's the link for John to get access to my document. So this whole external user access, if you've ever used Dropbox or Box or any of those other document collaboration solutions, they really kind of set the stage, in my opinion, for what the experience should be like for the world when they do this kind of collaboration around documents. And Microsoft brought it right in-house, and they said, all right, we see what's working, and we're going to bring it right in, and we're going to use that too. So just wanted to highlight that is a huge capability for the system. And again, as an administrator, if you're a tenant in SharePoint Online, you will be able to manage that. And in fact, the tooling around monitoring this and then managing access to specific resources, all that stuff is improving every day. And there are actually tools now, third-party tools that you can buy to help improve the sort of the awareness of what's going on sharing-wise with external users. So there's a whole conversation around that topic alone, right? All right, so I think we're on the last 2 slides here of benefits. OneDrive for Business, I touched on it just a moment ago. Anywhere access, that's like the key here. And secondly, the OneDrive sync client, which can install on your computer. Some organizations may have to go through some lengthy approval process for that software to be installed, but it really is a productivity boost for people working with SharePoint information or anything in the Office 365 ecosystem, really. So the OneDrive for Business tool would allow that user to be able to authenticate to the web and view all of the files that they work with most commonly, right? So if they use that OneDrive sync client, now they can bring down all these files to their computer as if they were just in the file system, but they're not. They're backed up, they're secured, they're all the things, right? Because they're actually hosted up in the cloud, but we have access to them through the local file system on our computer. Makes it really easy for users to continue to work with the documents that they do in a familiar way. So not a lot of training required if you go that route, right? And obviously, again, I can't stress this enough. Every organization's security stance and processes and red tape is a little bit different. So not everyone's going to get the sync client on their computers and things like that. But just know that OneDrive, it really is trying to be the new My Documents folder. So for instance, most organizations I work with, we go ahead and set up the OneDrive sync client, and we can tell the sync client now that the My Documents folder, the desktop folder, and the pictures folder are actually everything that ever gets put in those on that computer should also be stored up in the cloud, or should be stored in the cloud instead. That way, no matter where I go, I've got access to the documents I work on. So if my computer dies, backed up, no big deal. If I'm overseas on a trip for work and I left the computer back in the hotel room, I can log in pretty much from anywhere securely, two-factor authentication, and get to the files and the folders and still continue to work with my documents, right? So that kind of stuff it's super important, and I think it's going to change the way we do work because we're sort of in that remote work world now. So shared drives, we're looking at that's pretty much every migration's got a shared drive or a network drive that we're trying to migrate as well. And that ends up being, a couple of solutions to that, whether that means it goes into some OneDrive spaces or it goes into SharePoint sites and document libraries online, right? We're trying to get off those shared drives. I'm trying to get those into a performance system that's got all the benefits of OneDrive or SharePoint, versioning, collaboration, you name it, right? So this being one of the tools that we're using to get off those shared drives. There's so much to talk about. I mean, so much. Just a few more things on one slide, because I was like, I can't talk about this all day long, all the benefits of it, right? 99.9% uptime, you got the reduced costs associated with using a SaaS software versus providing an entire infrastructure and a team to support the infrastructure, right? And then trying to stay up to date on licensing of the new version every year and installing that, you know what I'm talking about. The improved storage capacity, right? Oh my God, we need 10 terabytes more of SAN storage now to support our SharePoint farm. Oh God, what's that gonna cost, right? So now it's a little bit simpler, right? You get a certain amount of storage space for your tenant, and then you also get a little added on for each user that you have licensed in that tenant. So, a little bit of a simpler process to walk through, but you will, if you're a large, heavy, data heavy organization, you may be looking at, trying to, optimize your storage options if you go to SharePoint Online. Maybe you are going up into the 10s and 20s and 30s of terabytes of storage, and now you're looking at custom solutions to try to get that off of SharePoint, but yet surfaceable through SharePoint. I don't know, right? Just kind of talking through some experiences we've had. Zero maintenance, again, super key to, you're not having to schedule those maintenance weekends, you're not having to run the CUs and the CVE updates and all the things to your SharePoint farm that bring it down and then potentially cause problems and wreak havoc, right? And then you spend time troubleshooting that stuff. So hybrid, I want to bring that up. I don't touch a lot on it in this call, but hybrid is an awesome capability because maybe when we get into these gotchas in a minute, you're going to find, oh, I got some of those actually. What are we going to do about that? Hybrid could be the way to go because it could let you run your SharePoint farm on-prem still in some limited capacity, yet move over into the cloud and use both at the same time, right? It's definitely an idea and definitely a solution to those that can't get off of those custom solutions they developed in a SharePoint on-prem environment. Last but not least, going from CapEx to OpEx, right? Capital expenditures to operational expenditures. Capital being more perpetual licensing model, moving over into subscription-based licensing, which usually falls under an operational expense. Some organizations are super ecstatic about moving that stuff over, not as a capital expense, but now as an operational expense, and the budgets might be larger over there. Traditionally, that wasn't the case. Now, it's looking more and more like organizations are living and breathing that way. I'm going to check chat real quick because we are, let's see here. Mainly SharePoint communications.
Yeah, and start with what is the location of the feature updates site?
Yeah. So if you guys want to type this in, I don't know the exact URL, but it's Microsoft 365 Roadmap. You just do a search for that, it'll be the first result. And again, down that left column, there's a whole bunch of choices there to filter down what you're looking for. If it's SharePoint specifically, you just kind of expand the products tab there. Go ahead and check SharePoint and be on your way. And then Yeah, that should be all you need there. If you're looking for more information on that, like the end that webinar I did a couple weeks ago, it'd be a great source for more of a deep dive into the things to expect and what's coming. If you're looking for that, then I can help you get a link to that too.
Yep,
What do we got? Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a question.
How do you invite users from outside of organization with, for instance, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo? Yeah, generic accounts. So that's exactly what the new external user, guest user access solution is all about, right? So it's real simple. It's well documented in the Microsoft documentation. So if you just do a few searches for it, you'll probably find the docs link there that'll show you the exact screens that a user will see as they go through the process. But it's real simple. You just literally say share, and you do it from the context of whatever it is you're trying to share. If it's a folder, or if it's a specific file, or maybe it's a library or a site, you hit the share button, and then you can just type in the email address. And as long as external sharing is enabled for your organization, it's going to say, hey, this guy's outside the organization. Are you okay with that, right? And if so, then you can go ahead and move through the process, and it'll send them an email. And they're going to get an email, and they're going to click the link in the email. And once they do that, they'll go through the process of either A, because they have a Microsoft account already, just logging in, or B, if they don't, because it's Gmail account, Outlook account, Yahoo account, etc., then it'll just take them through 2 screens to generate a Microsoft account that can be used real quick. Now, some people have a problem with the fact that it requires them to build that Microsoft account, but how else are we going to prove you are you and have any sort of auditability if we don't do that, right? So it's very key that we understand that. Good question, though. Okay, I'm going to keep moving here. So we have moved on now from benefits to things to consider. And we've had a lot of experience with SharePoint migrations, and it's been a pleasure to have those experiences. It's also been extremely frustrating at times, right? And so today's call really is about putting these things in front of you where we've had these really frustrating times, and to help you prepare better for what to expect, right? So let's just dig right into them. So first of all, before we talk about those things, do you understand the flow of what a migration looks like? So if I was to summarize it into 4 really generic steps, right, this is what it might look like to go through a migration process. So first, we got to discover, right? We got to go through our current source site, which might be our SharePoint 2013, 2016, 2019 on-premises infrastructure. And we need to really deeply inventory what we've got going on there. I mean, deeply. And when we get to some later slides, I'll talk about that. And we need to inventory it. We need to understand the scope of what we're working with as is, right? And then we got to go through the design phase. And the design phase is where we're going to say, well, okay, so we understand what we have. Now, what do we want? When we go to SharePoint Online, there are a lot of things to take into consideration, like the new flattened architecture, right? And we'll dig into that in just a moment. But just know there's a different type of architecture in SharePoint Online that may have us reconceptualize or architect how we organize our site structures. Okay, so that's what we'll do in the design phases. We'll come up with that structure, and we'll plan for what we want to go from and to. So it's the sort of the as is and the vision to be, right? So then we go into setup, and setup's where we implement the design into the new destination environment. This is where we're going to get into SharePoint Online. We're going to start building out our SharePoint site structures to use potentially the hub site architecture, so that we can have, sort of sites that are related to sites, so that we can do some sharing of navigation and some other features like that. So setup is going to be where we do that. It's where we're going to build it out. And then you get into the migration. So, there's a lot of detail between discover and migrate. I mean, a lot. But, this is the general consensus, and I want everyone to be on the same page as to these are the 4 steps we generally go through, though, for getting into and out of the migration. So first thing first, right? Inventorying, as I said in the discovery phase, we definitely need to inventory everything. We need to know, right? Those large lists and those large sites, why are they so large? And could they be broken up as we move them over? Because as you probably know, right, we're moving on-prem to the cloud. That cloud resource, Microsoft 365, SharePoint Online in this case, they're not going to just let us move 10 terabytes all at once, right? They can't, because this is a SaaS solution, so software as a service, right? So if they've got millions of users, which if you haven't heard, 200 million users now, using the system. If they got these 200 million users using a system and you're uploading 10 terabytes of data as fast as you can, that's definitely going to impact the performance of the system for everyone else too. So they can't do that, right? So these large lists and large sites, not only just because of the migration throttling and stuff like that, but also because, the list view threshold limits and just a whole plethora of reasons why large lists need to be broken down, right? And they can't always, right? And that's okay. And we figure out solutions for each one. Everyone's unique, right? But you do need to be aware that large lists and large sites need to be broken up if possible. Now the sites, again, talking about the next stage, the design stage, you're going to want to figure that out, right? Are we going to be able to take these sites with us? Because subsites are not a thing in SharePoint Online. You don't use them. We don't do subsites any longer. Everything is a site collection. So that's probably confusing the heck out of you if you've never heard that before, but that's the new modern flat architecture that we talk about. Everything is called a site nowadays. And behind the scenes, and technically, that means a site collection. So if we've got this deeply nested group of large sites and subsites below them, we got to figure that out. We got to talk through it. We have to understand how we might organize that moving into the new architecture and through the design stage. Now, oops, sorry guys, got a fast mouse there clicking through. So customizations, we got to inventory the customizations. What have we done? Have we designed custom master pages? Do we have custom page layouts? Do we have in-page CSS to just dress up specific areas? Like, we need to know where all that stuff's at. Unused resources. How many sites out there are just haven't even been accessed in the last 2 years? Do we really need to migrate that? Like, minimizing, again, just to hit this again, minimizing the amount of data we have to consider for migration is really important. And so definitely looking at those unused resources is a key step to make that happen. So workflows, are any still running? How many are running? Where are they located? How do we get those, like I'm just talking about a workflow that's stuck in a running process because it's been waiting for some action to be taken before it can end it. Those won't migrate in that way, right? So you have, and first of all, those workflows ain't gonna migrate anyways. So we at least need to get them stopped or canceled or whatever into their end state. And then we need to look at them individually, one by one, and determine how we're going to get those over into SharePoint Online. Whether you're using third-party products or Nintex or whatever, or maybe you're going to redevelop them in Power Automate so that they work natively in the Office 365 ecosystem, right? Either way, we got to inventory those. We got to know how many, what the scope of them is. Are they simple? Are they complex, etc. Checked out files. I believe they throw errors in most migration tools. And so the files have to be checked in. How many of those do we have? Where are they? Who needs to look at them and determine what needs to happen with them? Long file paths, right? So, I'm mentioning all these things about the inventory, but if you use a tool like ShareGate or DocApp or any of those third-party MetaLogic solutions out there, they're going to throw these errors when it does the inventory for you. So I'm bringing them up, though, because they are key, and these are the things that you spend a lot of time looking at and trying to resolve. So long file paths, custom WSP solutions. I think everyone's familiar, probably, that all those third-party products you bought for your SharePoint farm, all those third-party solutions, plugins, you name it, themes, right? All that stuff, even custom ones that you did in-house because you had a couple developers on staff, none of that stuff's coming over, right? Not easily. If they're JavaScript or client-side based solutions, then hey, you might be at an advantage there with those. But for all those that are .NET, C# timer job based solutions, yep, we're going to have to focus those down and talk about how we're going to get those over into the new platform. Okay, how am I doing on time here? I got 20 minutes here, so let's keep rocking and rolling. Ellie, you got anything else going on in chat?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Sweet. All right, we'll keep rocking here. So another thing to consider when we're migrating, don't move it all at once, right? I said this just a minute ago and kind of hit on it, but I did it a little prematurely there. So a lot of the times people think that we're going to do this inventory, we're going to spend this time, and then since we have this tool, we're just going to click this button and it's just, we're going to come in on Monday and it'll be done. That's just not the case, right? And I know that's probably not exactly what you thought, but I just wanted to reiterate the fact that it definitely is like a one-by-one, list-by-list kind of a migration for most of the ones that we do, right? So obviously, the manning behind supporting a migration it's something to consider, right? There are going to be user, or I guess people behind the software if you're using a third-party product. And you could use the SharePoint migration tool if that, it's a simplistic tool that SharePoint provides, or Microsoft provides, I'm sorry, in SharePoint Online to allow you to move off of older SharePoint versions into the online. But it's pretty rudimentary in its capabilities. It's getting stronger and stronger, and they're starting to add more features to it. But it is a free tool, and it could be a way for you to get through this. But ultimately, most people will end up investing into a third-party product to help them through the migration. And if that's the case, then you're going to have someone behind that software working through all of these steps, right? And so as they're working through this process, they're going to be migrating structure of content first, hopefully. And what that means is we're going to go provision the site. So we got site A in the source, and now we want to build it out in SharePoint Online. So they're going to go build out the site, right? Migrate whatever they can around the properties of that site. Then they're going to go build out each list in each library, or migrate them, sorry, with the tool. And that allows the structure to be put into place. Now when the content comes over, you have less of a chance of error or complications than if you were just to say, move the site, the list, and the data together, right? A lot of the times we find lots of errors in that. It may be worth a shot to find out what that effort looks like, but majority of the time you're going to move list by list and then content. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear because we end up doing that most times. Okay, so then we have, during planning, we have to determine our strategy. And there are many ways to approach a migration. You've probably seen lots of it documented online. But the phased approach versus the cutover, I call it the age-old, but again, this hasn't been happening forever, so it's not the age-old. But a phased approach might look something like, this week we're going to move HR. Next week, we're going to move IT and then operations or something like that. However you want to break up your organization, right? Maybe you're doing pieces at a time so that, first of all, you're sort of user testing the migration at each step of the way and making improvements as you go so that finally, by the last group to move over, they're probably having a really good experience around that migration. Or you do a cutover, right? And these are not the only two options, but it seems to be the most prevalent. So if you do a cutover, it's like, all right, you guys go home Friday. Monday, when you come in, the tech team's going to be exhausted, but yeah, we're just going to hit this new URL. It's not always the best solution, but it can work in smaller situations and smaller organizations, right? And so something to consider when you're doing this migration and you're planning the strategy is make sure you remember that when you are doing that switchover finally, you're ready to get the people off of the on-prem solution and into the new. Maybe it's just a specific site. Make sure you lock that site down in the old. What ends up happening is people come back to work on Monday and they continue to work in the document on their desktop, and it was stored in SharePoint. And so when they did the change on Monday, it actually went and updated the site on-prem. Now, the site on-prem has got newer versions than the SharePoint Online one does, and we've technically done the migration already. So consider that, right? I know it doesn't seem like a very serious thing, but it happens so much, and then we end up having to do Delta migrations. And Delta migrations are actually not a bad thing at all. In fact, most migrations end up going this route, I would say, in the sense that we get IT stuff moved over into SharePoint Online and we keep working on it and refining it in the SharePoint Online instance and making sure everything actually came over, and we spend some time reviewing and analyzing, and people keep working in the on-prem side, right? And then a month later, we're like, all right, I think everything looks great. We're ready to move. We remediated any issues we had. We're ready to do the Delta migration, which means bring over anything since our last migration, any new versions, new documents, new anything. Let's go ahead and move that stuff over, and now we can turn off that old site and be ready to move. And tomorrow, everyone's using SharePoint Online for this team, right? Super cool. So those Delta migrations are definitely the way to go. Can you make SharePoint not look like SharePoint? Have we all said this? I think we have. I'm pretty sure we have, right? So we spent a lot of time. I mean, I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on in the Washington, D.C. area to make SharePoint not look like SharePoint. I have read every book there is about master page customizations, and I have implemented so many of them in SharePoint 2007, 2010, 2013, etc. And now we've moved into this modern era in SharePoint Online. And as a SaaS provided solution, Microsoft cannot let you build these customizations in, right? It would just have too much. I don't know if you recall ever doing that in your organization, but almost always there were weird bugs and issues and performance hits because of our customizations. And Microsoft says, no, we can't do that, right? So let us now, in this modern era, provide you with what we think good intranet design looks like. And I gotta admit, it's good. It's clean, it's minimal. It's probably not as customized as you'd like if you're into that kind of thing, but it suffices. And it really does, in my opinion, compete now with everything you're seeing out in the world for intranet portals and design. So now, since we can't use custom master pages, which you probably have in your on-prem environment, and you can't use custom page layouts to lay out pages differently than Microsoft has suggested back in the day, now you've got to do it through content design. So we've got this great responsive UI that we can work with in SharePoint Online now, modern SharePoint, and we make our sites look really beautiful now by adding really good imagery, by really nicely formatting our content, and just spending time on that. And it just, I gotta be honest with you, as a guy who loves aesthetics and UI and UX stuff, it can really look good. And it's easily achieved as long as someone cares, right? That's probably the case for most things in life, but yeah. So anyways, the UI stuff, definitely something you're going to consider. You're probably working with master pages and custom page layouts in your environment. Don't look past that because that's a big issue. It's not coming over to SharePoint Online. Okay. So I think we've got 2 slides left. So thank you all for bearing with me here. And we've only got about 10 more minutes. So we'll open it up for Q&A here in just a sec. But just to get through these last few slides, we've spent a ton of years extending SharePoint. And we've, just to hit further, we did the inventory in the earlier slide, and we talked about inventorying our custom solutions, our WSP solutions. That's pretty much like our .NET C# solutions we bought back in the day to extend our SharePoint farm to do things. And they were amazing. And we spent so much as an industry and as a partner program of Microsoft and all this, right? We spent so much time and money building those up, and now here we are in this new system that's not backward compatible, right? And it's something that we have to consider. So anyways, this slide put in because those WSPs, they're not coming over, right? And if they are those .NET solutions or C# solutions, or maybe they're timer jobs that you built, they're going to have to be re-architected. You're going to have to redevelop some of those solutions. They're just not. So if it is a third-party product and you reach out to the vendor and you're like, all right, we're making our upgrade, like, here at Bamboo, we will give you that next version to the cloud. If you already licensed the previous on-prem version, we'll just give you that as part of your upgrade plan. And I assume most companies do that, but you need to check with your vendors to ensure that they have a cloud-ready version of that same product, and they probably have some sort of a migration strategy for you to move the content out of that old solution and into the new one in the cloud, right? So it's something you got to dig into. So, timer jobs are a big thing. We used to write them all the time because we needed things to happen based on time, right? We needed things to run every 30 minutes, or we needed every night for something to happen, or, as a solution, I did something and now I need some service to go run to update something else. We would use timer jobs for all that, right? And those don't exist in SharePoint Online. So a lot of the time, you're going to find yourself writing potentially Power Automate solutions. Microsoft Flow is another term for Power Automate if you're not familiar. And so all that means is it's the new workflow engine in SharePoint Online. So you're going to end up using that a ton. You're going to need to find some specialists in that that can help you really, really help to automate your business processes and even convert some of your older solutions that are required to run in that sense. And last but not least, just want to talk about level of effort to be considered. And I say padded because, my God, the experience that we have with throttling in SharePoint Online is serious. It's something that you really need to take into consideration because as you move up into the cloud, as I said before, Microsoft's going to throttle your ability to just dump it all up into the cloud. Now, there are great solutions around that, third-party products, ShareGate and Metalogix and AdPoint.dev, all that stuff, right? They have this tooling to send it up to an Azure temporary place that allows it to then bypass some of that throttling, right? But in our experience, you end up throttled. And so we have a few recommendations there that as you're migrating, you're definitely going to want multiple instances if you have large amounts of data, multiple instances of your migration tool or software. so that two users can technically be pushing up at the same time, right? And that would have helped us in a lot of instances of our migration effort and support, because what you'll find is using a single account, and let's say, as an example, we were supporting a customer, we had to connect to their VPN to connect to the desktop, a virtual machine that they provided us as a service and support provider. That's what they installed the tool on. So ShareGate was on a virtual machine behind a VPN, and we had to log into that to do the migration so that we could be in their network, help them migrate off file shares and whatever else, right? And then use the tool to move it up to the cloud. Well, that VPN connection, not great speeds, right? We had very poor speeds, and it was super unstable, and it would just come down occasionally in the middle of our migration efforts, right? I mean, that had so much impact on the timeliness of our migration. It was unbelievable. So something to consider is to check that. What is the level of stability of those VPN and connectivity speeds that you have to Office 365 from wherever you're going to put that software to do the migration, right? Keep that in the back of your mind there. SharePoint pages were inaccessible, so we, as a single user, in my example here, we use ShareGate a lot as a company to help migrate. It just seems to be price-wise more approachable for a lot of the organizations we support. As we were using ShareGate to move things up, a single user using that tool, as they were pushing up, as the max amount of data they could possibly push up to the SharePoint Online instance, it would start to get throttled. And you'll see a notification on the SharePoint page as it's throttling you. But that same user, if they were to go to the SharePoint site while that's happening and try to view the library, because they're trying to see how far is this actually going, or they want to see, just check on the status, like, oh, did it move the folders over yet? Did it move the whatever it? Well, it actually will stop that user sometimes from loading the SharePoint pages. So just things to know, right? Like things that you might experience as you go through your migration, that those uploads and those throttles and all that stuff, well documented on Microsoft, sometimes not well documented. You might be experiencing things and you're like, well, this says nowhere why this is happening, right? There are some unexpected experiences around this, and the level of effort needs to be considered that it could slip, right? You do need to pad that quite a bit to take these things into account.
We do have some more questions. I know you're at the end.
Right. Yeah, that's an hour of talking, so let's get some questions.
One is around if you could discuss further migrating file shares, and then the last one is it better to create a team and then attach the SharePoint site to a hub, or create the SharePoint site and teamify it?
Yeah. I'll just start with the first one. I see there's a third one down there too, so we'll get to those. So can you say more about migrating file shares? So yeah, generally we were using these third-party products to help us migrate faster that way. Unless there have been a few occasions where I've used the SharePoint migration tool, it's called the SPMT. So as you get your new tenant set up and you go to SharePoint, there will be a navigation item there for the SPMT, the SharePoint migration tool, which again, just a summary, it's the SharePoint provided migration tool. And that can actually reach file shares. And I've used that in the past, and it works. It just doesn't have as great a reporting and monitoring around the process as, say, ShareGate does running through that process, right? So, the migration from file share, really, it boils down to you saying, all right, this stuff on the file share goes to this place in the destination, right, in SharePoint Online. And a lot of times that long pole in the tent is people trying to make sense of what the mess is that they've got on their file share now, right? So, you're going to spend a lot of time designing that, thinking about the architecture, where it's going to go, and then the tooling, can certainly support the effort there. So I hope that answered your question there, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous.
Kevin, I have just one extra tip for migrating file shares.
Yeah.
So whenever you do migrate it, like using a tool like, say, ShareGate, for example, there's something weird that happens with the permissions. So if you have NTFS permissions that are at that folder level, basically, whenever you move that into a library, the top level of those permissions does not come over, but if anything unique is in there, that does come over. So basically all the unique stuff is okay, and then at that library top level, you have to go in, break inheritance, and then add back those either groups, AD groups, if those migrated up, or users.
Okay.
So a little tricky situation that you get into. So yeah, some of the permissions migrate over, but not all of them.
Awesome. Good to note. I just found out how to add my video. So hello, everyone. Thanks for jumping on.
Oh, you did?
Sorry to click the whole webinar.
Well, we have a lot of questions, so.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right, so is it better to create a team and then attach the SharePoint site to a hub, or create the SharePoint site and Teamify it?
Yeah, Nick, I know you have a lot of experience in this recently. Do you want to hit that?
Yeah, to be honest, no difference really. The only one difference I would say is that for Teams, if you create a Teams, it does create an O365 group. It's not a mail-enabled group. You have to go in through PowerShell and change that. So if you wanted to be able to email the group that you create, you would actually go and create the group first, and then you would attach that to the Teams, and then you get the SharePoint site with it. So kind of similar down that path. There's like basically 3 ways to do it, you know, from the site or from the Teams. Or from an O365 group. So yeah, it just kind of depends if you want that mail enablement on the group email. And yeah, either way, the architecture ends up being the same.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered your question. Yeah.
Then we have, does Power Automate provide an event timer functionality? Close to like triggering an event, email, etc., after so many hours or days?
It does, yeah. You can schedule flows to run at specific times. It's actually pretty detailed in what it lets you get down to the minute, and then select, you know, what days you want it to run on, or what at what hour.
Yeah.
So basically, when you go into create a new flow, there's trigger types, and then you would just click, you know, scheduled.
Okay. Then Mr. Milton Lopez, the comments on ShareGate used over a VPN to a dedicated system are not quite accurate in regards to speed. I do that with the system running SG on our local LAN and have no performance issues. Okay, it's more like a comment.
It really is conditional to the environment you're in. And I will say that the environment we were in with that customer was really unperformant, right? So yes, you're 5G, I'm assuming you're saying, or your connection speeds there were probably ample enough for whatever you were doing, but they were not where we were at.
Okay, and then what is the file size limit to upload? We are at the E5/P2 plan.
File size limit to upload, we are at the E5. Yeah, we'll have to dig into it actually. I don't know off the top of my head. So I don't know.
Yes. It depends if it's for a single file or if it's for the site. I think they just increased it actually to 100 gigabytes.
Yeah.
It used to be 15.
Yeah, I did. That was in the weekly newsletter just recently talking about that increase. So it has just gone up. I don't think I have your contact details to be able to follow up with you on that. But if you wanted to email us at the end, I have my email address on the slide. If you wanted to email us, we could respond back and get you some information.
Okay, and then we have a request if you could speak a bit about handling solutions that inject JavaScript-based solution.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, Kendra, for the question. I skipped a slide. So the last slide here was actually about that, and I totally skipped it, so I apologize for that. But it is showing now. And it is important to note that the content editor and the script editor are gone, right? You can no longer, because we used to use those as tools for saying, all right, I want to put some code in this page, and I got to use the script editor web part to do that. Sometimes we'd use the content editor web part too, right? And so, yeah, those tools are gone. And in order to support now customizations like that, it's actually kind of a bulky solution, but it's definitely a more protected way to do things, and that's to create the SharePoint framework-based solutions that it can then be applied to. Nowadays, you can actually use a site collection level app catalog as opposed to an app catalog where you would deploy apps for the whole tenant. And so in SharePoint Online, we find a lot of people want to sort of silo where they deploy these types of solutions, like you might have done through the content editor web part, to a specific site. And to do that, you would build a SharePoint framework-based solution that deploys to that site collection level app catalog. So I don't know, I hope that answered your question, Kendra. Cool, I don't see any other questions at this time, and we are about a minute over. Just want to thank you all for jumping on. I'm going to hang out for about another minute, and then I'll shut it down. But if there are any final questions, or if I tend to shut it down right while you're typing your question, You can reach us at, let me actually navigate over. You can reach us here, sales@bamboosolutions.com. That all of us answer that. So if you're just looking to get a question answered or whatever, you can certainly just email that, and that'll get us all, like I said. You can call me directly at that phone number. And then I look forward to hearing from you guys. Any questions you have, any way we can help, we're always here to help.
And topics for future webinars.
Yeah, absolutely. Feedback, anything you can provide us. We love any of it. We'd love to just conversate with you in any way we can. So thank you all again. And again, I'll just hang out for one more minute. Am I like ultra blurry in that picture? So.
I'll comment afterwards. Let's.
Thank you.
I think you're good. I think people are logging off for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. So thanks for answering everything. This is awesome. Hey, no problem. I look forward to being able to provide some information. I live in this, dream it, breathe it. So I'm excited to share all the information I can. And if there's anything else, again, we're going to go ahead and cut it off. But thank you all. Sales at Bamboo Solutions. Ellie, Nicholas, thank you guys for your help.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep. And we will see you on the flip side.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.